Hello there, good evening. Welcome to episode 9 of the Rugby Nats chat show. We've got a couple of things to talk about tonight. The first thing I want to do is give you a bit of an update on the insurance situation from last week that attracted a few comments on Facebook and elsewhere. And we also are going to talk leading on from the Bridgewater episode at the weekend, talking about mini and youth rugby and retention. But if you don't mind, Mike, I'm just going to start with the insurance update.
Carry on, Paul.
Underneath the episode last week, Francis Bandy commented that he was a little bit concerned that the new players' personal accident insurance might be seen as a material benefit with the new rules coming up next year. And I've gone to the RFU for some clarification. I haven't had that back. But tonight, walking in here, I've been talking to the chairman at Reading, who is actually in the industry, and he tells me that material benefits are quite clearly defined. They're called a P11D benefit, and permanent healthcare, which that type of cover is definitely not a material benefit.
Good news then.
So it's good news for clubs, because Francis's point was correct, because the policy is going to be in a club name. It could be seen to be a material benefit, but it certainly isn't. But the other thing I picked up from Andy, which is quite interesting, there hasn't been a great deal of personal accident cover recently, but Howdens are not groundbreaking. There's other ones out there, and one of the ones that he pointed me at tonight was Cirencester Friendly, which is a friendly society, but they don't do it like Howdens are going to do it, where it's a club policy for selected players.
Yes.
It's a personal one for the individual player. It's quite a low premium. It's as low as £3, £4, £5 a week. The cover is the same, about £300 a week in benefit. But the difference is, which again Francis pointed out as potentially may not suit everybody with the Howdens cover, Howdens only pay out after 28 days off. And if you're self-employed, that could be
that's a big,
quite an issue, with mortgage payments and stuff like that. Cirencester Friendly pay out at the end of week 1.
Right.
So, there's some benefits. So my point, there are other insurance companies available, but my point of saying that is that there is actually options.
Yeah.
So if you are going to be advertising it to your players or pointing them in the right direction, I think it's well worth doing a bit of research first.
Yes.
Because there are options now.
No, fair point.
But thanks very much for communicating, Francis. It was helpful and certainly well worth looking into. Did you see the Bridgewater coverage at the weekend?
I did indeed. Yeah, I found it very interesting and very laudable ambition in that they would like to base the club on those players that progress from the underage level. It's as a seamless progression through to Colts and then into the senior side of the club. And I think that most clubs would agree with that.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think most clubs it would be part of their strategy. However, I don't wish to be a killjoy. I don't know what you feel, but I think times have changed, and it is only one aspect of recruitment and player retention. For a variety of reasons, which I think we can chat about in a moment. I've said on earlier episodes that I believe that really for a club has got to have what I would call a mixed economy strategy. So, you have your core players coming through. But I think you also need to perhaps link up with, if possible, educational institutions, sixth form colleges, which Bridgewater appear to be doing.
They've got neighbours next door.
Universities, etc. And also then attracting for the more ambitious clubs, perhaps to attract players into the area, or keeping tabs on those players that are coming into the area and work on branding your club as being the club that people would like to come to. So I do believe that the underage and the juniors are very, very important, but I think they're only one part of the puzzle.
Certainly, and again, you can only speak from your own strengths. And I know that as a club, we've discussed retention of youngsters as they get sort of 15, 16, 17, 18 Colts. more times than I care to remember. And the conversation's getting harder because there's so much more for rugby to, well, not just rugby, any sport to compete with these days. They've got social media, they've got jobs, they've got, dating, alcohol, outside distractions. And it does make it difficult for the clubs. And I had a little play around with our figures today, and we've got sort of mid 400s of youngsters. And I've looked back over the sort of last 2 or 3 years, and the numbers stayed quite constant, and it's quite difficult on the lovely GMS to sort of bore down tremendously deeply. But I can see from our club's point of view, it could be a false illusion because the numbers are staying constant, but that's largely because of the growth of the under 6s and under 7s coming in and backfilling from underneath. And what I can't really see by boring down into it is the seepage at the top. But I do see reduced numbers, and I think, at the top there of the minis and the juniors, retention is a massive problem.
Yeah, and I think we really have to discuss and analyse why. Now, I think that our comments this evening, and I'd be interested in what our viewers have to say,
absolutely,
is that these can be very personal, and therefore, by being personal, we can generalise. This might not be a trend or trends happening all over the country, but as previously being head coach at Redigensians, part of my duties were looking after the Colts for about 4 or 5 years. Now, we went through, during that period, we went through quite hard times. We actually fielded sides every week. We made sure that we got teams on the field. The boys enjoyed playing. We'd lose more than we'd win, but we kept it going. But we didn't really seem to have the numbers. But recently, the last couple of years, it's picked up. The Colts now are thriving. We could probably turn out an A and a B side, but it's all very cyclical. And I think you have to bear that in mind with the players that come through. I don't think it's been helped by the RFU, and I must confess that this is one aspect. There, as the president of Bridgewater indicated, there is a massive problem with the 18 to 24 age group of males, and it's how to keep them in the game. Well, I think a mistake was when they changed the Colts from under 19 to 18s. I think that was an error, because I feel that there are certain players who are not in a position, do not have the confidence either physically or mentally to go in to a senior environment and play in a men's team. And that extra year kept them in the game, kept them in the club, and they might go off to university, but you could retain links with them and they were still playing the game.
And watch them when they're coming back.
That's right. On a personal level now, and this is again where the viewers' comments will be interesting, I find now that there are high proportional. When they reach this 18, some of them come up into the senior section. There are those that go off to university and give up playing, and there are those that go to university. If it's a rugby playing university, will get a game and will try and stay in the game. But I still think we're losing too many, and I think really the games administrators have to look at this problem, I think, and come up with a solution. I think they probably have been driven by World Rugby to have a uniformity, so you have these age groups all over the rugby world, as it were. So the 18s, having 18s is part of that, and 19s is not. Now, one solution that the RFU came up with was actually for the clubs to engage in under 20 rugby,
which has never been on the curriculum.
No, it's never been the fabric of English rugby. You go to Ireland, they've always had 18s, and they have a club under 20 competition. They do in Australia and they do in New Zealand, but it's never been the case over here at club level. We have got, I think, a very, very good competition in the county under 20 competition.
Yes.
But then the RFU, have lowered the funding of that every year. So exactly what are we doing with these guys? Are we trying to drive people out of the game? Players who might have a bit of ambition, who seek just to perhaps to play a bit of representative rugby, pit their skills, etc. They're going to be driven out of the game unless we revamp this particular competition. And I think the other aspect that has come into the game now. And you've mentioned obviously lifestyle choices, etc. But I think the influence of the professional game, because how many times are youngsters now hoovered up by the
local academy or whatever, yeah.
And they're put on the ACE scheme. Their egos have been massaged since they were 16. They're told how good they are, and then one in
Tomorrow's
100,
next superstar.
Precisely, 1 in 100 make it. The rest, what happens to them? Well, some of them come back to their clubs, but I've had experiences where they've come back, they're fragile, their confidence is gone, and they drift away from the game. And they're interesting, no figures on that. You know, how many people are on the ACE scheme and carry on and play? You know, we've had experiences of where boys have not been, you know, we don't want to overplay guys, but fellas who haven't been playing for their ACE team, college team in the week, but are not permitted to play because they've got to get in the gym. And this sort of link between the club and those boys is gone, and it's very, very difficult to get it back. So yeah, I think it's great if we can get youngsters coming through the club and have a seamless transition, but I think it's getting more and more difficult because of changes, which have to be addressed by the administration, the RFU.
But I don't think you can find a solution unless you can identify the cause.
Yes.
And I'd be really interested to hear. I've already mentioned a couple of causes and things that I've heard and been a party to try and stop that is to try and engage boys and girls outside of rugby. So you've got a successful or any under 15 team or 16 team, but we've actually done things outside of rugby, like do a block booking with your local community premiership team or your local National One side, and take them along for a day out.
I mean, yeah.
We've even done the museum tour at Twickenham.
Yeah.
We've done straightforward cinema.
Yes.
Go-karting.
Yes.
Things like that to try and keep them together as a cohesive unit. But if you've got any suggestions before next week, and you want to chip in with perhaps identifying the cause why there's seepage at those age groups, or please, even a solution, it would be really good to hear. Thanks very much for watching.